The tea tasted bitter. Ariadne set down the porcelain cup, frowning at the acrid aftertaste coating her tongue. Marcus had brought it to her himself, insisting she needed the herbal blend to settle her stomach. She'd been sick for weeks now, unable to keep down more than broth and bread, and the pack healer had finally confirmed what her body had been trying to tell her. 3 heartbeats, 3 lives growing inside her. Triplets. The word still felt impossible in her mind, a gift so precious she'd wept when the healer had shown her the ultrasound images. 3 tiny forms nestled together like secrets. She'd rushed to find Marcus immediately, her mate of 2 years, imagining his joy at becoming a father. But when she'd told him, something had flickered across his face, something cold and calculating that vanished so quickly she'd convinced herself she'd imagined it. Now, staring at the tea he'd insisted she drink, that flicker returned to her memory with sharp clarity. Her stomach cramped suddenly, a twisting agony that doubled her over. The cup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor of their cabin. Ariadne gasped, clutching her abdomen as fire spread through her veins, her wolf howling in alarm inside her mind. "Marcus!" she choked out, looking up at her mate where he stood by the window. He turned slowly, and the expression on his face confirmed every terrible instinct screaming through her body. No concern, no alarm, just cold satisfaction as he watched her collapse to her knees. "I'm sorry, Ari," he said, and his voice held no remorse at all. "But I can't let you have them." The words didn't make sense through the burning pain. "What did you—" "The tea, wolfsbane and nightshade. Enough to end the pregnancy and make it look like a tragic miscarriage." Marcus crossed the room, crouching before her, but making no move to help as she writhed. "You weren't supposed to be able to carry children. The healer said your bloodline was too weak. I chose you because you were safe. A mate who would give me status without complicating my plans." Ariadne's vision blurred, tears streaming down her face. "Plans? Alpha Brennan is old, weak. When he dies, the pack will need strong leadership, and as his beta and son-in-law, I'm positioned perfectly. But not if you produce heirs. Not if you give the pack a reason to look to your children instead of me." He reached out, almost gentle, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "You were supposed to be barren, Ariadne. You ruined everything by getting pregnant." The betrayal cut deeper than the poison. 2 years. 2 years of believing this man was her fated mate, of building a life together, of trusting him with everything she was. And he'd been planning this the entire time, seeing her only as a stepping stone to power. Her wolf surged inside her, maternal instinct overriding even the toxins flooding her system. "Protect the pups. Protect them." "They're your children," Ariadne whispered, her hand pressed protectively over her belly. "How can you—" "They're obstacles." Marcus stood, looking down at her with something almost like pity. "I'll mourn you publicly, the grieving widower. It will only strengthen my position." He turned toward the door, and Ariadne realized with crystal clarity that he intended to leave her here to die alone. Rage ignited beneath her terror, a white-hot fury unlike anything she'd ever felt. Her children, her babies, were not obstacles. They were miracles, and she would not let this monster take them from her. The power that erupted from her core wasn't something she'd known she possessed. It burst outward like a shockwave, pure protective instinct given form. The windows exploded. The door blew off its hinges. Marcus was thrown backward, slamming into the far wall hard enough to crack the timber. Ariadne dragged herself to her feet, her body screaming in protest but her will stronger than the poison. Her hands glowed with a faint silver light, and she could feel her wolf rising, stronger than ever before, fueled by the fierce need to survive for her unborn children. "You will not touch them," she snarled, her voice layered with power she didn't understand. Marcus stared at her in shock, blood trickling from his temple. "What? That's impossible. You're nobody." But Ariadne didn't wait to hear more. She stumbled toward the shattered doorway, her body fighting both the poison and the strange new power coursing through her. Behind her, she heard Marcus roar in fury, heard him shift into his wolf form with the wet sound of transformation. She ran. The Silver Crescent territory blurred around her as she fled, her wolf lending her speed despite the toxins weighing down her limbs. She could hear Marcus and others behind her. He must have alerted his hunters, must have prepared for the possibility that she'd try to escape. The thought that he'd planned this so carefully, so coldly, sent fresh anguish through her chest. Keep running. Protect the pups. Nothing else matters. Her wolf's voice was stronger than it had ever been, and Ariadne surrendered to it, letting instinct guide her toward the border. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away, had to put distance between her children and the male who wanted them dead. A figure materialized from the shadows ahead, ancient and ethereal. Elder Cassandra, the pack's mystical advisor, stood in a shaft of moonlight that seemed too bright, too focused. Her eyes glowed silver as she raised one gnarled hand. "Stop, child." Ariadne skidded to a halt, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Please, Marcus, he poisoned me. I know what he's done." Cassandra's voice resonated with otherworldly authority. "And I know why. The moon goddess sent me a vision, Ariadne. Those children you carry, they are not what Marcus believes. Not obstacles, but salvation." "I don't understand." "Your triplets will unite the fractured wolf kingdoms. They will bring an end to centuries of division and warfare. That is their destiny." The elder's eyes bore into her. "And that is why you must survive. Those who profit from our world's fractures will hunt you. Marcus is only the first." The words should have terrified her, but instead they filled Ariadne with a strange, fierce determination. Her children mattered. They weren't just her miracles, they were the future. "How do I save them?" Ariadne whispered. "Run north, to the royal territory. The Alpha King will—" Cassandra's words cut off as an arrow whistled through the air, missing Ariadne by inches. Marcus and 4 of his hunters burst from the tree line, all in wolf form, their eyes glowing with predatory intent. Cassandra vanished like smoke, and Ariadne was alone again, wounded and poisoned, facing down 5 trained warriors who wanted her dead. She ran. Her legs threatened to give out with every step. The poison was winning, shutting down her system piece by piece. But she thought of the 3 tiny heartbeats inside her, of the prophecy, of the future her children deserved, and she pushed forward. The border had to be close. The royal territory was said to be protected by ancient magic and the most powerful alpha in generations. If she could just reach it, maybe. Her foot caught on a root. She went down hard, her palms scraping against stone and earth. Behind her, the hunter's howls grew closer. Ariadne clawed at the ground, trying to rise, but her body finally betrayed her. The poison had spread too far. She collapsed at the base of an ancient pine, her vision darkening at the edges, one hand pressed protectively over her belly. Above her, the moon shone through the branches, impossibly bright and full. A blood moon. She hadn't even realized. "I'm sorry," she thought to her children. "I tried." Then the world went dark. Pain was the first thing Ariadne registered as consciousness returned, sharp and burning through her veins. But beneath the pain, she felt something else. Warmth, safety, arms holding her against a broad chest, the scent of pine and winter storms surrounding her. "Stay still." The voice was deep, commanding, edged with barely controlled fury. "You're safe now. Safe." The words seemed impossible. Ariadne forced her eyes open and found herself staring up at a face carved from shadow and starlight. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, eyes that glowed molten gold in the pre-dawn darkness, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The Alpha King. It had to be. No one else radiated this kind of power. "The babies!" she gasped, trying to move, to check, to are alive. I can hear their heartbeats. 3 of them. His arms tightened fractionally around her, and something in his expression shifted, possessive and protective. Who did this to you? The moment his fingers brushed against her throat, checking her pulse, the world exploded. The mate bond snapped into place with the force of a lightning strike. Ariadne felt it sear through every nerve, every cell, a connection so profound and intense it dwarfed everything she'd felt with Marcus. This was real. This was right. This was what the moon goddess intended, a bond that sang of home and forever and absolute belonging. From the Alpha King's sharp inhale, the way his entire body went rigid, she knew he felt it too. That's impossible, he breathed, his golden eyes wide. You're already mated. I can smell him on you. He tried to kill me. The words tumbled out desperately. Marcus, my mate, he poisoned me because I'm carrying triplets. He doesn't want them. He wants power. He's coming. He and his hunters. Please, you have to. A howl cut through the morning air. Close, too close. Ridge, and somehow Ariadne knew his name now, could feel it through the bond, carefully set her down, positioning her behind him in one fluid movement. Around them, royal guards materialized from the mist like phantoms, massive wolves in silver-marked pelts forming a protective circle. Marcus and his hunters broke through the tree line, skidding to a halt as they registered the Alpha King standing before them. For one heartbeat, silence reigned. Then Marcus shifted back to human form, his eyes calculating as he took in the situation. Alpha King Ridge, Marcus said, inclining his head in false respect. Forgive the intrusion into your territory. We're pursuing a criminal from Silver Crescent Pack, my mate. He gestured toward Ariadne. She's had a psychotic break, injured pack members, and fled. I'm here to bring her home. Liar, Ariadne spat, trying to stand despite her weakened state. He poisoned me. He tried to murder me and our children because... She's delusional, Marcus interrupted smoothly. The pregnancy has affected her mind. Please, Alpha King, we'll take her back for treatment and... She's not your mate. Ridge's voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. He took one step forward, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. She's mine. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Marcus's mask slipped, rage twisting his features. That's impossible. She bears my mark. She's bound to me. You can't... The moon goddess can do what she wills. Ridge's eyes blazed gold, his power radiating outward until even Ariadne could feel it pressing against her skin. Your bond was false. A mistake. This, he gestured between himself and Ariadne, is truth. And you tried to murder my mate and my children. They're not yours. They are now. Ridge moved faster than Ariadne's eyes could track. One moment he stood still, the next he was in front of Marcus, his hand wrapped around the beta's throat, lifting him off the ground. The other hunters lunged forward, but the royal guards cut them down before they took 2 steps, efficiency born of centuries of training. Marcus clawed at Ridge's grip, his eyes bulging. You can't! This is murder! This is justice! Ridge's voice was arctic. You crossed into royal territory in pursuit of my mate. You admitted to poisoning her. You attempted to murder 3 innocent lives. I am Alpha King, and this is my judgment. Please, Marcus choked out, terror finally replacing his arrogance. Ridge's expression didn't change. You showed her no mercy. You'll receive none from me. The crack of Marcus's neck breaking echoed through the forest. Ridge dropped the body carelessly, turning immediately back to Ariadne. His hands were gentle as they cupped her face, checking her injuries, his eyes scanning her for damage even as 4 corpses cooled behind him. Can you walk? He asked softly. Ariadne stared up at him, shock numbing her to everything else. This male, this powerful, terrifying Alpha King, had just executed her tormentor without hesitation, had claimed her as his mate, had called her children his own. I don't understand, she whispered. Neither do I. But the bond doesn't lie. Ridge's thumb brushed across her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. You're my mate, Ariadne. You and the lives you carry belong to me now, and I protect what's mine. Behind them, the sun began to rise, painting the blood-soaked ground in shades of gold and crimson. Ariadne felt the poison still burning through her system, felt the exhaustion dragging at her consciousness, felt the impossibility of everything that had happened. But she also felt the mate bond humming between them, true and unbreakable. And for the first time since she'd discovered her pregnancy, she felt safe. The royal fortress rose from the mountainside like a crown of stone and silver, its spires piercing the dawn sky. Ariadne watched it approach from the window of Ridge's armored vehicle, her hand pressed protectively over her belly where the triplets rested, their heartbeats a steady reassurance beneath her palm. The healer Ridge had summoned to the border had managed to counteract most of the poison, though her body still ached with exhaustion and residual toxins. She could feel Ridge's eyes on her from the driver's seat, the mate bond thrumming between them like a living thing. It was so different from what she'd felt with Marcus. That connection had been a thin thread, easily ignored. This was a wildfire, consuming and undeniable. The suite I've prepared for you overlooks the southern gardens, Ridge said quietly, his deep voice washing over her. You'll have complete privacy. No one enters without your permission. Ariadne nodded but didn't look at him. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford, mate bond or not. Marcus had taught her that powerful males saw others only as tools for their ambitions. The Alpha King had killed for her, yes, but what did he expect in return? Her children? Her obedience? Her body? The bond pulsed with sudden pain, and she realized Ridge had felt her fear through their connection. I won't hurt you, he said, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I swear on my title and my life, you and those children are safe here. That's what he said too. The words escaped before she could stop them. In the beginning. Ridge pulled the vehicle through massive iron gates that swung open at their approach, guards saluting as they passed. Then I'll have to prove it through action rather than words. The fortress interior was breathtaking, all soaring ceilings and natural stone warmed by tapestries and firelight. But Ariadne barely registered the beauty as Ridge led her through corridors, his hand hovering near her lower back without quite touching, respecting her space even as his alpha instincts clearly screamed at him to claim and protect. Two female warriors fell into step behind them, both tall and lethal-looking despite their grace. The shorter one had close-cropped dark hair and kind eyes, while the taller wore her blonde hair in intricate braids threaded with silver. This is Maya and Serene, Ridge said, gesturing to them. They're my most trusted guards and will be assigned to your protection. They answer only to you and me. Maya offered a small smile. We're honored to serve you, Luna. Luna, the title for an alpha's mate. Ariadne's throat tightened. She wasn't anyone's Luna. She was a pregnant refugee who'd watched her mate die less than an hour ago, no matter how much Marcus had deserved it. The suite Ridge showed her to was larger than the entire cabin she'd shared with Marcus. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with morning light, revealing gardens below that burst with late spring blooms. The furniture was elegant but comfortable, and a fire already crackled in the massive hearth. Through an open doorway, she glimpsed a bedroom with a bed large enough for 4 people. There's a private bathing room through there, Ridge said, pointing to another door. The healers left supplies to help with the remaining poison in your system. Maya and Seren will be just outside if you need anything. He paused, his golden eyes searching her face. Anything at all, Ariadne. Food, clothes, books, company, solitude. Just tell them. She wanted to thank him, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she managed, Why are you doing this? Because you're my mate. He said it simply, as if it explained everything, and because no one should have to fear in their own home. This is your home now, for as long as you want it. When he left, Closing the door softly behind him, Ariadne finally let herself collapse onto the plush sofa, her body shaking with delayed shock. Everything that had happened in the past 12 hours crashed over her. The poison, the betrayal, the prophecy, Marcus's death, the impossible mate bond with the most powerful alpha in the kingdom. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her belly. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered to her children, "but I promise I'll keep you safe, whatever it takes." 3 days passed in a haze of healing and uncertainty. The royal healers visited morning and evening, monitoring the triplets and treating the lingering effects of the poison. Ariadne's strength returned gradually, along with her appetite, something she was grateful for, since Ridge seemed determined to feed her personally. He appeared at mealtimes like clockwork, carrying trays laden with food he'd clearly selected himself based on what she'd eaten the day before. He never stayed long, never pushed for conversation, just ensured she ate and asked if she needed anything. Then he'd leave, and Ariadne would feel the mate bond stretch and thin between them, a constant awareness of his location somewhere in the fortress. It was maddening and comforting in equal measure. On the fourth morning, Maya convinced her to walk the healing gardens. "The fresh air will do you and the babies good," she said with her gentle smile. "And the gardens are completely secure. No one gets in without clearance." Seren nodded agreement, her hand resting casually on the sword at her hip. "We'll be with you the entire time." The gardens were even more beautiful up close, a carefully cultivated wilderness of flowering trees and medicinal herbs. Ariadne found herself relaxing despite her weariness, breathing in the scent of jasmine and listening to the distant sound of a fountain. Her hand rested on her belly, where the triplets had begun to move more noticeably, tiny flutters that made her heart ache with fierce love. "You're glowing," Maya observed, walking beside her along a pebbled path. "Pregnancy suits you." "I feel like a whale," Ariadne admitted, then flushed. "Sorry, I shouldn't complain. After everything, you're entitled to complain about whatever you want." Seren's voice was matter-of-fact. "You've been through hell. A little whining about swollen ankles is hardly inappropriate." Ariadne found herself smiling, the first genuine expression of happiness she'd felt in days. These women weren't what she'd expected. Not cold, distant guards, but warm and real, treating her like a person rather than a valuable object to be protected. "How long have you served Ridge?" she asked. 10 years for me," Maya said. "He saved my life when rogues attacked my family. I was the only survivor, and he took me in, trained me personally." 15 years, Seren added. "He found me in a fighting ring, being used as entertainment by a pack that didn't believe females should be warriors. He challenged the alpha, won, and offered freedom to any who wanted it. I've been his guard ever since." Ariadne absorbed this, trying to reconcile the image of the terrifying alpha king who'd snapped Marcus's neck with the male who saved orphans and freed enslaved fighters. "He's not what I expected. He's the best male I've ever known," Maya said simply. "Fair, honorable, protective of those weaker than him. He'd burn the world down for his people." She paused, then added carefully, "And now you're his people. His mate. He'd burn it down for you too." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they kindled something warm in her chest, a tentative hope she didn't quite dare examine. They rounded a corner into a section of the garden where ancient roses climbed stone walls, their blooms ranging from white to deepest crimson. Ariadne paused to admire them, reaching out to touch a soft petal. The arrow came from nowhere, slicing through the air toward her heart. Seren moved like lightning, her sword flashing up to deflect the projectile. It skittered across the stone path, its tip glistening with something dark. Poison. Another arrow followed, then 3 more, all aimed at Ariadne with deadly precision. "Get her down!" Maya roared, her body already shifting into her wolf form. Ariadne found herself flat on the ground, Serene's body covering hers protectively as chaos erupted around them. She could hear snarling, the clash of metal on metal, screams of pain. Her wolf rose up inside her, desperate to defend her children, that strange silver power from the forest flickering at her fingertips. A figure burst from the roses, male, masked, with a crossbow aimed directly at where she lay pinned beneath Serene. Time seemed to slow as his finger tightened on the trigger. As Ariadne realized the angle meant the bolt would hit Serene's back and possibly pierce through to her. Then Ridge was there. His transformation happened mid-leap, human to wolf in a heartbeat. His wolf form was massive, easily twice the size of Maya's, his fur black as midnight with silver markings that seemed to glow with power. He hit the assassin with the force of an avalanche, his jaws closing around the male's throat and tearing it out in one savage motion. Two more attackers came at him from different angles. Ridge moved through them like death incarnate, all precision and brutal efficiency. He tore through flesh and bone with his fangs, his claws ripping through Kevlar and leather like paper. Blood sprayed across the white roses, painting them crimson. Ariadne watched in horrified awe as the Alpha King slaughtered her would-be killers without mercy, his golden eyes blazing with primal fury. This was true power, not Marcus's calculated cruelty, but the raw strength of a protector defending what was his. When the last assassin fell, Ridge shifted back to human form, his chest heaving, blood covering his hands and torso. His eyes found Ariadne immediately, scanning her for injury even as more guards poured into the garden. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, barely controlled. "No, Serene and Maya. They saved me." Ridge's expression softened fractionally as he looked at his two guards, who were both standing now, weapons drawn and ready despite their own injuries. "Well done. Get checked by the healers." Then his attention was back on Ariadne, his hand reaching out before stopping just short of touching her. "I need to hold you." "May I?" The fact that he asked, even now, with violence and death surrounding them and the mate bond screaming for contact, made something crack in Ariadne's chest. She nodded, and Ridge carefully pulled her to her feet and into his arms, his whole body trembling with residual rage and fear. "I'm sorry," he breathed into her hair. "I'm so fucking sorry. They got past our defenses. I nearly lost you." Ariadne let herself lean into his strength, just for a moment. Against all logic, she felt safe in the arms of this blood-soaked warrior. "You saved me. I'll always save you." Ridge pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, his hand coming up to cup her face with devastating gentleness. "Always, Ariadne. No matter what it costs." The war room thrummed with tension, packed with Ridge's council and military commanders. Ariadne sat in a chair Ridge had positioned directly beside his own at the head of the table, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder as he addressed his gathered wolves. "The assassins bore marks of the divided court, Finn," Ridge's beta said grimly. He was tall and lean with copper hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. "They're making their move faster than we anticipated." "What's the divided court?" Ariadne asked, her hand protectively over her belly where the triplets were unusually active, as if they could sense her distress. Ridge's jaw tightened. "A shadow council of alphas who profit from keeping our kingdoms fractured and at war. They broker weapons deals, sell territory information, and manipulate conflicts for their own gain. Unified wolf kingdoms would destroy their power base." "And they know about the prophecy," Finn added, his eyes flicking to Ariadne with something like reverence. "About your children uniting what they've worked centuries to keep divided." The weight of it settled over Ariadne like a shroud. Her babies weren't even born yet, and already powerful enemies wanted them dead. How did they find out? "Elder Cassandra had apprentices," Ridge said quietly. "At least one must have betrayed her confidence." His thumb stroked her shoulder in an absent, soothing gesture. But their mistake was moving against you in my territory. They've given me justification for what comes next. A new voice cut through the room, cold and officious. Alpha King Ridge, we must discuss the matter of the Silver Crescent Pack's formal complaint. Ariadne turned to see a weasel-faced man in formal robes approaching the table. Ridge's hand tightened on her shoulder in warning. Ambassador Thorne, Ridge acknowledged icily. You have 5 minutes. The Silver Crescent Pack has filed a grievance with the Council of Alphas, claiming you unlawfully executed their beta without trial. They demand the return of his mate. The ambassador's eyes slid to Ariadne with barely concealed disdain, and financial compensation for their loss. Their beta crossed into royal territory in pursuit of my mate, whom he had poisoned in an attempt to murder her and her unborn children, Ridge said, his voice deadly soft. I executed him for attempted murder of my Luna and my heirs. The law is clear. They contest the validity of your mate claim, given that the female was already bonded. The moon goddess herself corrected their false bond with a true one. Ridge stood, his power filling the room like a physical force. I will not debate theology with bureaucrats. Ariadne is my mate. Any who challenge that will face me personally. Thorne paled but pressed on. Alpha King, the Silver Crescent Pack has allied with 3 others and amassed an army at the border. They demand justice, or they threaten to... To what? Attack my kingdom? Ridge's laugh was without humor. Let them come. I'll paint the borders with their blood. They claim they'll take this to the full council, possibly initiate proceedings to challenge your right to rule. On what grounds? Thorne's smile was oily. That you've allowed personal interests to compromise your judgment. That you started a war over a female. The words hit Ariadne like a physical blow. This was her fault. Her children's fault. They were going to tear Ridge's kingdom apart because of her. She started to rise, to say something, to... Ridge's hand pressed her back down gently but firmly. The council can try whatever they like. My judgment is sound, and if the Silver Crescent Pack wants war, I'll give them annihilation. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into Thorne. Tell them this. Ariadne and her children are under my protection. Any further attempts on their lives will be considered acts of war against the royal kingdom itself, and I will respond accordingly. Thorne fled. The moment the door closed behind him, Ridge turned to Ariadne, kneeling beside her chair so they were eye to eye. I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault. The Silver Crescent Pack was already corrupt, already allied with the divided court. Marcus's death was just an excuse. They would have found another reason to make their move. But I'm the reason they're using, Ariadne whispered, her eyes burning. Your council member was right. You're starting a war over me. No. Ridge's hands came up to frame her face, his touch achingly gentle. I'm ending centuries of manipulation and shadow games. You and your children are just the catalyst. This confrontation was inevitable. His thumbs brushed away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I won't let you believe you're a burden. You're my mate, and I protect what's mine. There was that phrase again, the one that should have made her feel like property, but instead made her feel cherished. Ariadne didn't understand it, didn't understand him, didn't understand why the most powerful alpha in the kingdom would risk everything for a broken female and 3 unborn children who weren't even his blood. But when she looked into his golden eyes, she saw only truth. Sleep eluded her that night. Every time Ariadne closed her eyes, she saw arrows flying toward her, saw blood spraying across white roses, saw armies gathering at borders to tear Ridge's kingdom apart, all because of her. Finally, she gave up and wrapped herself in a thick robe, padding barefoot through the fortress halls. Maya and Seren had retired for the night on her insistence. She needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out what she was going to do. She found herself climbing stairs, following some instinct she couldn't name, until she emerged onto the fortress battlements. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, and above her, the full moon hung like a silver coin against velvet darkness. Ridge stood at the far end, his hands braced against the stone parapet, staring out over his kingdom. He hadn't dressed for the night watch. His shirt was half unbuttoned, his feet bare, as if he'd come here as unable to sleep as she was. "You should be resting," he said without turning around. "You and the babies need sleep. So do you." Ariadne approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. "Don't you have hundreds of guards to keep watch?" "I do." He finally looked at her, and the moonlight revealed exhaustion etched into his features, along with something darker. "Fear. But I can't trust anyone else with your safety right now, not after today. Ridge, you can't stand watch personally every night. You're the Alpha King. You need rest too. I'll rest when I know you're safe." His voice was rough, almost broken. "I nearly lost you today, Ariadne. If Seren had been a second slower, if Maya hadn't sensed the threat." He cut himself off, his jaw clenching. "I can't fail you. I won't." The raw emotion in his voice shattered something in Ariadne's chest. She moved closer, drawn by the mate bond and something deeper, something that transcended supernatural connections. "Why does it matter so much? You barely know me." Ridge turned to face her fully, and in his eyes she saw centuries of pain. "When I was 8 years old, assassins infiltrated our fortress. They killed my parents, my siblings, everyone I loved. I survived only because my father's beta hid me in a secret passage, his hands clenched on the stone. I was powerless to save them, powerless to protect my family. I swore that night that I would never be powerless again, that no one under my protection would suffer because I wasn't strong enough. Ridge, then you appeared at my border, dying from poison, carrying 3 innocent lives, and the mate bond snapped into place. The moon goddess gave me a second chance at family, Ariadne, at love, at everything I lost." His voice broke. "I won't fail you the way I failed them. I can't." Ariadne's eyes burned with tears as she finally understood. Ridge's ferocious protectiveness wasn't about possession, it was about redemption, about healing wounds that had never properly closed, about refusing to be that powerless child ever again. "You didn't fail them," she whispered. "You were 8 years old. I know that here." He tapped his temple. "But not here." His hand pressed over his heart. "The guilt never leaves." She thought of her own guilt, how she'd ignored every warning sign with Marcus, how she'd let herself be isolated and controlled, how she'd nearly gotten her children killed because she'd been too naive to see the danger. They were both carrying wounds that hadn't healed, both terrified of failing again. "I'm scared," Ariadne admitted, the words tumbling out. "Marcus spent 2 years convincing me I was worthless, that I was weak and stupid and lucky he tolerated me. When I look at you, I see strength and power and this impossible perfection, and I don't understand why you'd want someone as broken as me." "You're not broken." Ridge closed the distance between them, his hands hovering near her face before she nodded permission for touch. His palms were warm against her cheeks, his eyes blazing with intensity. "You survived poison. You protected your children when you had every reason to give up. You triggered power that shouldn't have been accessible yet because your maternal instincts were that strong. You're not weak, Ariadne. You're fierce and brave and exactly what I need." "What you need?" "You make me want to be better than just a warrior king," he said softly. "You make me want to build rather than just defend, to create peace rather than just prevent war." His thumb traced her lower lip, sending electricity through the mate bond. "The moon goddess didn't give you to me by accident. She gave me someone who understands pain and survival, someone who won't expect me to be perfect, because you know what it's like to carry scars." Ariadne's breath caught as the truth of his words settled into her bones. They were both damaged, both fighting demons from their pasts. But maybe that meant they could understand each other in ways whole, undamaged people never could. "Tell me about them," she whispered. "Your family." So he did. Standing on the battlements under the moon, Ridge told her about his mother's laugh, his father's wisdom, his sister's mischief, his brother's dreams. He spoke of loss and grief and the long, lonely years of building his power while carrying guilt like chains. And Ariadne found herself sharing too, not just about Marcus's abuse, but about her own parents, long dead, about her dreams before her world had narrowed to survival, about the hopes she'd had for her children before she'd learned they were prophesied to change the world. Somewhere in the sharing, their hands found each other, fingers interlacing naturally. The mate bond hummed between them, no longer frightening but comforting, a promise of connection and understanding. "They're moving," Ariadne said suddenly, pressing Ridge's hand to her belly. "The triplets. They always get active at night." Ridge's entire body went still as he felt the flutters beneath his palm, tiny movements that represented 3 perfect lives. When she looked up at his face, tears tracked down his cheeks, glinting silver in the moonlight. "They're real," he breathed, wonder coloring his voice. "They're actually real. Did you doubt it?" "No, I've never felt anything like this. It's miraculous." His hand splayed wider, covering more of her belly, and one of the babies kicked directly into his palm. Ridge laughed, the sound startled and joyful. Did they just... "That's the stubborn one," Ariadne said, smiling despite everything. "Probably going to be a warrior, like their mother." Ridge's eyes met hers, full of emotions too complex to name. "They're going to be amazing, Ariadne. Strong and brave and loved. So loved." "By you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "By me," he confirmed without hesitation. "I know I'm not their biological father. I know you have every reason to fear powerful males, but I swear to you on everything I am that I already love these children. They're mine because you're mine. And I will spend every day of my life making sure they know they're wanted and valued and safe." It was too much. The sincerity in his voice, the tears in his eyes, the gentle strength of his hand on her belly. Ariadne felt her carefully constructed walls cracking, felt hope blooming in spaces Marcus had filled with poison. Ridge wasn't lying. The mate bond would have revealed deception. He meant every word. "I want to trust you," she whispered. "I'm trying to trust you. That's all I ask. Time and patience, Ariadne. I'll prove myself to you, one day at a time." Ridge's hand squeezed hers. "And no matter what the Silver Crescent Pack threatens, no matter what armies gather at our borders, you and these babies will be safe. I promise you that." They stood together in the moonlight, 2 broken people finding unexpected solace in each other, while 3 tiny lives moved between them, the future neither had known they needed. Below them, the kingdom slept, unaware that war was coming. But on the battlements, something else was being built, something fragile but real. Not just a mate bond, but understanding. Not just attraction, but the tentative first threads of trust. The servant who brought Ariadne breakfast the next morning was new, a petite blonde with downcast eyes and a nervous demeanor. Helena, she said her name was, recently assigned to the Luna's service. Ariadne accepted the tray with thanks, too preoccupied with her own thoughts to notice anything amiss. Her night with Ridge had changed something fundamental in her perception of him, of their bond, of their future. She found herself actually looking forward to his visits, to the way his eyes lit up when he saw her, to the gentle touches that were becoming more frequent as her comfort with him grew. She was almost happy. The thought terrified her. That afternoon, Helena helped her dress for a meeting with Ridge's council. "You look beautiful, Luna," the servant said softly, fastening the last button on Ariadne's gown, a deep green that complemented her coloring. "The Alpha King is very lucky." "Thank you," Ariadne murmured, studying her reflection. She did look better. The hollows beneath her eyes had faded, her skin glowed with the health of her pregnancy, and for the first time in years, she looked like someone worth protecting. "Luna," Helena said hesitantly, "may I speak freely?" "Of course. The Silver Crescent Pack. They're not just threatening war. They've allied with the divided court, and together they're planning something terrible. I've heard whispers among the servants. They want to tear the kingdom apart, and it's all because you're here. Ariadne's stomach clenched. I know. Ridge told me. But did he tell you about the casualties? The projected deaths if war breaks out? Thousands, Luna. Thousands of wolves will die fighting over you and your children. Helena's voice dropped to a whisper. Is that what you want? All that blood on your hands? No, of course not. Then maybe there's another way. If you left voluntarily, if you removed yourself from the equation, perhaps the Alpha King could negotiate peace. Perhaps all those lives could be spared. The words burrowed into Ariadne's mind like poison, finding every insecurity Marcus had planted and nurturing them. Thousands would die. Because of her. Because she was too weak to protect herself, too broken to be worth a kingdom. I couldn't leave, she said, but her voice wavered. Ridge would stop me. The Alpha King has a patrol tonight at the western border. He'll be gone until dawn. And I know a way out of the fortress that avoids the guards. If you truly wanted to spare him this war, to protect his people from slaughter. Helena trailed off meaningfully. Ariadne pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the triplets move. Could she do it? Could she sacrifice her own safety and Ridge's protection to prevent a war? The mate bond pulled at her heart, but the image of thousands dying because of her was worse. Think about it, Luna, Helena urged gently. I only want to help. After Helena left, Ariadne stood at her window, staring out at the fortress and the kingdom beyond. Ridge's words from last night echoed in her memory. You're not weak. You're fierce and brave. But if she was brave, didn't that mean making the hard choice? The self-sacrificing one? She thought about it all day. Through the council meeting where stern-faced wolves discussed troop movements and supply lines. Through dinner, which Ridge brought her personally, his eyes concerned as he noticed her unusual silence. Through the evening, as Helena's words played on repeat in her mind. Thousands will die. All that blood on your hands. When darkness fell and Ridge departed for his patrol, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead and promising to return by dawn, Ariadne made her decision. She would leave. She would remove herself from the equation, and Ridge could negotiate peace. He would be angry, yes, but he would live. His kingdom would survive without being torn apart by civil war. It was the right choice. The brave choice. The self-sacrificing choice. She didn't let herself think about the mate bond or the agony Ridge would feel at her departure. She didn't let herself remember his tears as he'd felt her children move, or his promise that they would know only love and safety. She just focused on the image of thousands of lives saved, of war prevented, of Ridge's kingdom intact. Helena appeared at her door near midnight, cloaked and ready. Are you certain, Luna? Ariadne took a deep breath and nodded. Let's go. They moved through the fortress like shadows, Helena guiding her down back passages and servant corridors Ariadne had never seen. It was surprisingly easy, too easy, a distant part of her mind whispered, but she pushed the thought away. They emerged into a courtyard near the stables where a horse waited, saddled and ready. Helena helped her mount, then handed her a cloak. Head west toward the border. There's a neutral pack 2 days' ride from here that will shelter you. Thank you, Ariadne whispered. Tell Ridge, tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I did this to protect him. Helena smiled, and in the moonlight, Ariadne saw something cold in her expression. Oh, I'll tell him. But first, I need to deliver you somewhere else. Before Ariadne could react, Helena grabbed her ankle and squeezed. Pain exploded through her leg as something chemical burned through her skin, a paralyzing agent. Ariadne tried to scream, to shift, to do anything, but her body went rigid and useless. She toppled from the horse into Helena's waiting arms. Stupid girl, Helena hissed, her sweet demeanor vanishing. Did you really think the Alpha King's fortress was so easy to escape? I've been feeding you doubts for days, and you swallowed them like honey. She dragged Ariadne toward a wagon hidden in the shadows. The divided court sends their thanks for your cooperation. Horror flooded through Ariadne as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. Not brave, not self-sacrificing, just stupid, naive. Everything Marcus had always said she was, and now her children would pay the price. Helena loaded her into the wagon, and as darkness claimed her consciousness, Ariadne felt the mate bond stretch and stretch between her and Ridge. She tried to send him warning through it, tried to scream her betrayal and location, but the bond muffled under some kind of magical suppression. The last thing she felt before unconsciousness took her was the triplets moving frantically in her belly, and the terrible knowledge that she'd destroyed the only chance at safety they'd ever had. I'm sorry, she thought to Ridge, to her children, to the future she'd just lost. I'm so sorry. Ridge returned to the fortress at dawn, exhausted but satisfied with the night's patrol. The border was secure, his guards were well positioned, and he was looking forward to a few hours of sleep before breakfast with Ariadne. The mate bond hummed pleasantly in his chest, a constant awareness of her presence in the fortress. Except it wasn't humming. It was screaming. Ridge broke into a run, taking the stairs to her suite 3 at a time. Maya and Seren were already at her door, pounding frantically, their faces pale with terror. She's not answering, Maya gasped. And we can't feel her in there. Ridge didn't wait. He kicked the door off its hinges and stormed inside, his power flooding the space. The suite was empty. Her bed hadn't been slept in. Her clothes were gone. And the mate bond was stretched thin and distant, muffled by something Ridge recognized with dawning horror as magic-dampening enchantments, the same kind used in high-security prisons to contain dangerous wolves. No, he breathed, his world tilting. No, no, no! Finn burst through the door, holding something in his fist. We found this in the stables. One of the servants, Helena, is missing, and so is a horse. But Ridge. He opened his fist to reveal a pendant marked with the symbol of the divided court. She was a plant. The words barely registered through the roaring in Ridge's ears. Ariadne was gone. His mate, his second chance, the mother of his children, gone. Taken by the very enemies he'd sworn to protect her from. And it was his fault. He'd left her. He'd allowed a traitor into his fortress. He'd failed to protect her just like he'd failed to protect his family all those years ago. The agony that ripped through Ridge was physical, the mate bond tearing at his insides like claws. He collapsed to his knees, his shift triggering involuntarily as his control shattered. His wolf howled, a sound of such anguish that every wolf in the fortress felt it in their bones. Ariadne, Ariadne, Ariadne. Ridge, Finn said urgently, gripping his alpha's shoulder. Ridge, we'll find her. We'll get her back. But Ridge barely heard through the pain and rage and devastating grief consuming him. She was gone. Because he'd failed her. Because he hadn't been enough, hadn't protected her well enough, hadn't kept her safe. History repeating itself in the cruelest possible way. When Ridge finally shifted back, his eyes were wild, feral with fury and determination. Mobilize the armies. Call every loyal pack. I want the divided court's locations mapped within the hour. Ridge, they have her in a magic-dampened fortress. We don't know where. Then we tear apart every fortress in the kingdom until we find her. Ridge roared, his power exploding outward and cracking the stone walls. She's carrying my children. She's my mate. And I will burn this world to ash before I let them keep her. Finn held his gaze, then nodded. Yes, Alpha King. We go to war. As his beta ran to carry out orders, Ridge stood at Ariadne's window, staring out at his kingdom. Somewhere out there, his mate was imprisoned and terrified, believing she'd made a brave choice when she'd actually been manipulated and betrayed. He pressed his hand to his chest, to the mate bond that pulled painfully toward the west. Hold on, he whispered to her, knowing she couldn't hear but saying it anyway. Hold on, Ariadne. I'm coming for you. and heaven help anyone who stands in my way. The council chamber fell silent as Ridge's fist came down on the war table, splintering the ancient oak straight through the middle. Maps and strategic markers scattered across the floor, but no one moved to retrieve them. Every wolf in the room kept their eyes lowered, their necks bared in submission to their alpha king's fury. You want me to negotiate? Ridge's voice was deceptively quiet, the kind of soft that preceded violence. You want me to abandon my mate to those animals for the sake of political stability? Lord Ashford, the eldest council member, cleared his throat carefully. Alpha King, we only suggest that perhaps a diplomatic solution. There is no diplomatic solution with wolves who kidnap pregnant females. Ridge's eyes blazed gold, his power pressing against every wolf in the room until they could barely breathe. The divided court has declared war by taking what's mine. I'm simply going to finish it. Finn stepped forward, the only wolf brave enough to approach Ridge in this state. The armies are ready, my king. We have 17 loyal packs pledged to our banner, with more arriving daily. But the divided court has 23 packs in their alliance, and the Silver Crescent has fortified their territory. The casualties will be... I don't care about casualties. Ridge's hands clenched, his claws extending involuntarily. I care about getting my mate back before they harm her or my children. Every moment we waste talking is another moment she's in their hands. Through the mate bond, Ridge could feel Ariadne's terror and despair like acid in his veins. The magic dampening enchantments muffled their connection, but they couldn't sever it entirely. He knew she was alive. He knew she was suffering. And he knew with absolute certainty that he would tear apart anyone who stood between them. Ridge. Finn's voice dropped lower, meant only for his alpha's ears. You haven't slept in 3 days. You haven't eaten. You're running on rage and the mate bond, and while I understand, you don't understand. Ridge turned on his beta, and Finn actually stepped back from the feral grief in his king's eyes. You've never had a mate, Finn. You've never felt your soul being slowly ripped apart because the other half of you is trapped and terrified. Every breath I take without her nearby is agony. Every heartbeat that passes while she's imprisoned is torture. His voice cracked. I failed her. I let a traitor into my fortress. I left her vulnerable, and now she's paying the price for my failures. You didn't fail her, Finn said firmly. The divided court has been planning this for months, maybe years. They would have found another way if not Helena. This isn't on you. But Ridge barely heard him. The guilt was a living thing inside his chest, wrapped around his heart like thorns. He'd promised Ariadne safety. He'd sworn no one would hurt her or their children. And within days of that promise, she'd been taken from under his protection, just like his family had been taken all those years ago. History repeating itself because he hadn't been strong enough, fast enough, careful enough. I'm leading the first assault personally, Ridge announced, his voice returning to that deadly calm. We march on the Silver Crescent territory at dawn. Any pack that stands with them will be given one chance to surrender. After that, we show no mercy. The council members exchanged worried glances. Lord Ashford spoke carefully. My king, if you fall in battle, the kingdom will endure, but I won't endure without her. Ridge's eyes swept the room, daring anyone to challenge him. Ariadne is my mate, my queen, the mother of my children. There is no version of this story where I negotiate her away or wait patiently while politicians debate. There is only war, swift and brutal, until she's back in my arms. No one argued further. The war camp sprawled across the valley like a living thing. Thousands of warriors from loyal packs gathered under Ridge's banner. Campfires dotted the landscape, and the sound of weapons being sharpened filled the night air. Ridge stood at the edge of camp, staring toward the western horizon, where the obsidian hold lay hidden in enemy territory. Hold on, he thought desperately along the mate bond. I'm coming. The scouts report the Silver Crescent has fortified their borders with trenches and magical wards, Finn said, approaching with a map. They're expecting a siege, not a direct assault. Then we'll give them what they're not expecting. Ridge traced a path on the map with one claw. We hit them from 3 sides simultaneously. Overwhelming force. We punch through their defenses in the first wave and keep pushing until we reach their Alpha's compound. That's suicide tactics, Ridge. We'll lose. I don't care. Ridge's voice was flat, emotionless, in a way that frightened Finn more than his rage had. Every moment we delay is another moment Ariadne suffers. I'll walk through fire to reach her. Our warriors know the stakes. They're willing to do the same. Finn studied his friend's face, seeing the toll the mate bond separation was taking. Ridge looked like he'd aged years in days, his eyes hollowed with exhaustion and anguish, his skin pale beneath his tan. The mate bond was literally killing him, piece by piece, the longer Ariadne remained beyond his reach. There's something you need to know, Finn said quietly. About the mate bond, about why you're so much stronger when fighting for her. Ridge's attention sharpened. Explain. I've been researching in the ancient texts, trying to understand how your bond with Ariadne could override her existing bond with Marcus. The scholars believe it's because you're true mates, the kind chosen by the moon goddess herself, not just compatible wolves who happen to find each other. Finn paused. True mates amplify each other's power. When you fight for her, you're not just fighting with your own strength. You're drawing on hers too, and she on yours. The bond doesn't weaken you. It makes you exponentially stronger. Ridge absorbed this, feeling the truth of it resonate through his bones. Even muffled and suppressed, the mate bond thrummed with power, lending him strength he'd never possessed before Ariadne entered his life. Then let's put that power to use. The battle began at dawn. Ridge led the charge personally, his massive king wolf form tearing through the Silver Crescent's defenses like they were made of paper. His claws ripped through magical wards, his jaws crushed through wooden barriers, and his power rolled ahead of him like a tidal wave that sent enemy warriors fleeing in terror. Behind him, the royal army poured through the breach, warriors from 17 packs fighting as one united force. The Silver Crescent wolves tried to rally, tried to hold their lines, but they were fighting wolves who believed in their cause with religious fervor. Every soldier in Ridge's army knew they were fighting to save their future queen and the prophesied triplets. They fought with the devotion of true believers. Ridge was unstoppable. He moved through enemy ranks like death incarnate, his focus singular and terrifying. Any wolf who stood between him and his mate died swiftly. Any who surrendered were spared but restrained. But those who raised weapons against him found no mercy in the Alpha King's golden eyes. The Silver Crescent's beta, a wolf named Garrett, who'd stood beside Marcus in his treachery, tried to challenge Ridge directly. It was brave and stupid. Ridge tore out his throat before the beta finished his challenge declaration, not even slowing in his advance toward the Alpha's compound. By midday, the Silver Crescent Pack's resistance had crumbled. Their Alpha, a grizzled wolf named Brennan who'd enabled Marcus's corruption, finally emerged from his fortified lodge. He was Ariadne's father, Ridge realized with cold fury, the male who'd allowed his beta to abuse and poison his own daughter. Enough! Brennan roared, his power radiating outward in a desperate attempt to halt the assault. I surrender! The Silver Crescent surrenders! Ridge shifted back to human form, standing in the ruins of Brennan's territory, covered in blood and breathing hard. Where is she? Where did the divided court take my mate? Brennan's face paled. I don't know. They didn't tell us. They just said we needed to keep your armies occupied while they... He cut off, seeing death in Ridge's eyes. While they what? Ridge's voice was barely above a whisper, more terrifying than any shout. While they took the children, they planned to take the triplets the moment they're born, to separate them and ensure the prophecy never comes true. Brennan dropped to his knees, his neck bared. I'm sorry. I didn't know Marcus was so corrupt. I didn't know he'd... You didn't protect your daughter, Ridge interrupted coldly. You're as guilty as Marcus was. The only reason I'm not killing you now is because Ariadne may want that justice for herself. He turned to his warriors. Take him and all his command structure into custody. The Silver Crescent Pack is dissolved. Any who wish to pledge loyalty to the royal kingdom may do so. Any who refuse will be exiled. Finn appeared at his shoulder, slightly wounded but alive. The other packs in the Divided Courts Alliance are falling back. They weren't expecting us to break through the Silver Crescent so quickly. We have momentum, Ridge. If we push now, then we push. Ridge felt the mate bond pulling him westward, toward the Obsidian Hold, toward Ariadne. How far to the prison fortress? 2 days' march for an army. But for you alone, I'm not waiting 2 days. Ridge's eyes blazed with determination and desperation. I'll run ahead. Bring the army as fast as you can, but I'm not delaying. Every instinct I have is screaming that time is running out. Finn started to argue, then saw the raw fear beneath Ridge's fury. Go, he said simply. We'll be right behind you. Ridge shifted and ran, leaving his army to follow. The mate bond guided him like a compass, pulling him toward his other half with magnetic intensity. He ran through the day and into the night, his king wolf form covering ground at supernatural speed, driven by love and terror in equal measure. Hold on, he thought desperately. Just hold on, Ariadne. I'm almost there. The Obsidian Hold was a fortress carved from black volcanic rock, its walls inscribed with ancient runes that dampened magical power. Ariadne could feel the chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, each link etched with symbols that suppressed her wolf, kept her weak and human and vulnerable. She'd been here for days. She'd lost count of how many. The cell was cold and dark, lit only by a single torch that burned with sickly green flame. They'd fed her just enough to keep the babies alive, but not enough to give her strength. Her captors had made their intentions clear. The moment she gave birth, they would take the triplets and dispose of her. The divided court leader, a wolf named Lord Malachi with cruel eyes and a voice like poisoned honey, visited daily to check her progress. Any day now, he'd said that morning, his hand pressed to her swollen belly in a mockery of tenderness. 3 perfect children to be raised separately, trained to hate each other, turned into weapons for our purposes rather than the unity the prophecy promises. Ariadne had tried to fight, had tried to reach her wolf, but the magic-dampening chains held firm. She'd screamed for Ridge through the mate bond until her voice was hoarse, but the enchantments muffled her cries to barely a whisper. She was trapped and powerless, just like she'd been with Marcus. Except this time, her children would suffer for her weakness. The contractions started at midnight. Ariadne gasped as pain ripped through her abdomen, her body beginning the process of bringing her children into a world that wanted them dead. She pressed her chained hands to her belly, tears streaming down her face. Not yet, she whispered to the triplets. Please, not yet. Your father is coming. Ridge is coming. Just wait a little longer. But her body didn't listen. The contractions intensified, coming faster, and Ariadne realized with horror that the stress and poor conditions had triggered early labor. Her babies were coming, whether she was ready or not. Guards appeared at her cell door, alerted by her cries. Get Lord Malachi, one snapped. She's in labor. No, Ariadne sobbed, curling around her belly protectively. No, please. But Lord Malachi was already striding down the corridor, his expression eager and terrible. Finally. Prepare the separation chambers. The moment each infant is born, take it immediately. I want them on opposite sides of the kingdom before dawn. You can't, Ariadne gasped between contractions. They're innocent. They're babies. They're prophecy, Malachi corrected coldly. And I'm rewriting their story before it can destroy everything I've built. As another contraction tore through her, something shifted inside Ariadne. Not physical, but deeper. A presence stirred in her blood, ancient and powerful, awakened by the threat to her unborn children. She felt heat building in her core, spreading outward through her veins like liquid fire. The mother wolf protects her young. The voice wasn't hers. It belonged to something older, something that had been sleeping in her bloodline for generations. Elder Cassandra appeared in her vision, ethereal and glowing, though Ariadne knew the ancient wolf wasn't physically present. "Your true nature awakens, child," Cassandra said, her voice echoing with otherworldly power. "You are not just wolf. You carry the blood of the mother wolves, the first females who birthed our entire race. Their power sleeps until their descendants face threats to their young. Then," she smiled, fierce and proud, "then they become unstoppable." "I don't know how," Ariadne whimpered as another contraction hit. "You don't need to know. Your body knows. Your blood knows. Your children know. Trust them. Trust yourself." Cassandra's form began to fade. "Show them what it means to threaten a mother wolf's young." The vision vanished, but the power remained, building with each contraction, each threat, each moment her children moved closer to birth and danger. Ariadne felt the chains around her wrists begin to glow with silver light, her power, overwhelming the suppression magic through sheer maternal fury. "What?" Lord Malachi stepped back, his eyes widening. "That's impossible. The chains—" Ariadne looked up at him, and her eyes blazed pure silver. When she spoke, her voice resonated with the power of 1,000 mothers who'd fought to protect their young throughout history. "You will not touch my children." The chains shattered. Power exploded from Ariadne's core, a shockwave of silver light that blew apart the cell door and sent the guards flying backward. She rose to her feet, her pregnant body somehow graceful despite her advanced labor, her hands glowing with ancient magic. Lord Malachi stumbled backward, fear replacing his arrogance. "Stop her! Use the suppression—" But nothing could suppress this. The mother wolf's power didn't come from her wolf form, it came from something more primal, more fundamental. The drive to protect one's children transcended magic and could not be contained by mere enchantments. Ariadne moved through the guards like a force of nature. She didn't kill, the mother wolf protected life, not destroyed it, but she incapacitated with brutal efficiency. Wolves who lunged at her found themselves thrown against walls by invisible force. Those who tried to grab her were repelled by barriers of silver light. She fought her way through the dungeons and up the stairs, following instinct toward freedom and safety for her children. Another contraction hit, and she gasped, leaning against the stone wall as her body continued its work. But even the pain couldn't stop her now. Nothing could stop her. Lord Malachi appeared at the end of the corridor, flanked by his elite guards. "You're in labor, Ariadne. You're weak and vulnerable. Even with this impossible power, you can't fight us all while giving birth. Watch me," she snarled, and silver light erupted from her hands. The battle was brutal and swift. Ariadne's power carved through Malachi's guards, her maternal fury lending her strength she'd never imagined. She was protecting her children. Nothing else mattered. Not pain, not exhaustion, not the impossibility of what she was doing. She reached the outer walls of the obsidian hold, just as her water broke. Ariadne cried out, collapsing against the battlements as her body demanded she stop, demanded she give birth now. But she could see the horizon, could see freedom, and she refused to let her children be born in this prison. "Just a little further," she whispered to them, to herself. "Your father is coming. I can feel him. Just hold on." Behind her, Lord Malachi's roar of fury echoed through the fortress. Ahead of her, dawn was breaking over the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. And through the mate bond, suddenly clear and strong, she felt Ridge's presence like the sun emerging from eclipse. "I'm here," his voice resonated through their connection. "I've got you, my love. I'm here." Ridge saw the obsidian hold from a distance, saw the silver light exploding from its walls, saw the magical barriers shattering, saw power radiating outward in waves that he recognized in his bones. Ariadne. His mate was fighting, was free, was calling to him through the bond with desperate intensity. He pushed his wolf form harder, faster, until he was practically flying across the ground. The bond guided him unerringly to the fortress's outer wall where Ariadne stood, glowing with otherworldly power, her pregnant belly prominent even in her defensive stance. Their eyes met across the distance, and the mate bond exploded. Golden light erupted from ridge to match Ariadne's silver, the two colors spiraling together and merging into something incandescent and beautiful. The bond, no longer suppressed, snapped into full power for the first time since their separation. The force of it sent shockwaves across the battlefield, a physical manifestation of two souls reuniting. Ridge shifted mid-leap, landing in human form beside Ariadne and pulling her into his arms in one smooth motion. The moment they touched, their combined power doubled, then tripled, feeding off their connection and love and desperate relief. "You came!" Ariadne sobbed against his chest, her hands clutching his shoulders as another contraction hit. "Always," Ridge breathed, his own eyes wet with tears. "Always, my love. I'll always come for you." He felt her body tense with labor and swept her up carefully. "The baby's coming now," she gasped. "I tried to hold on, but then we end this quickly." Ridge turned to face the divided court forces pouring from the fortress, his eyes blazing with protective fury. With one arm holding Ariadne safely against his chest, he raised his other hand, and their combined power lashed out like a weapon. Lord Malachi emerged from the fortress, his face twisted with rage. "You think love conquers all, Alpha King? You think your mate bond makes you invincible?" He gestured, and his remaining forces, hundreds of warriors loyal to the divided court, surrounded them. "You're outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender the female and the children, and I'll let you live." Ridge's laugh was cold and terrible. "You threatened my mate. You imprisoned my children. There is no universe where you survive this day." "Then you'll die together," Malachi snarled, raising his hand to signal the attack. But before his forces could move, Ariadne lifted her own hand, her silver power blazing brighter. "You wanted to know what my children would be?" she called out, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "They're the children of a mother wolf and a true Alpha King. They're the future you're too blind to see, and I will not let you take that future." The silver and gold light spiraled upward, merging into a pillar that reached the sky. Every wolf on the battlefield felt it. The undeniable truth that unity was stronger than division, that love was more powerful than fear, that some bonds could not be broken by any force in this world. Lord Malachi's warriors began to lower their weapons, their eyes wide with awe and terror. They were watching prophecy fulfill itself in real time, watching power that transcended anything they'd been taught was possible. "No!" Malachi screamed, his careful plans crumbling around him. "Attack! Kill them both!" But only a handful obeyed. The rest were already kneeling, their necks bared in submission to the power radiating from Ridge and Ariadne's bond. Malachi, desperate and furious, shifted into his wolf form and lunged directly at Ariadne, his jaws aimed for her throat in a last-ditch attempt to prevent the prophecy. Ridge moved to intercept, but Ariadne's power lashed out first, catching Malachi mid-leap and holding him suspended in the air. Together, Ariadne whispered to Ridge, and he understood immediately. Their powers merged completely, silver and gold becoming something new and unstoppable. Together, moving as one, they released that combined force. It struck Malachi like divine judgment, and the divided court's leader simply ceased to exist, his body dissolving into ash that scattered on the wind. The remaining enemy forces dropped their weapons and knelt. Around them, packs who'd allied with the divided court began pledging loyalty to Ridge and Ariadne, their voices joining in a chorus of submission and awe. The prophecy was undeniable now. These were the rulers who would unite their fractured world. Ariadne gasped, doubling over in Ridge's arms as another massive contraction hit. "Ridge, the babies." "I've got you," he murmured, already moving toward a clear area away from the battlefield. Finn appeared with Maya and Saren, the royal army having finally caught up. "Clear the space. Get healers, now! But there wasn't time. Ariadne's labor had progressed too far, the stress and power expenditure accelerating the process. Ridge laid her down gently on his cloak, his hands cradling her face as she cried out with the effort of bringing their children into the world. "You can do this," he whispered fiercely. "You're the strongest person I've ever known. You survived Marcus, survived poison, survived imprisonment, and broke free from a fortress no wolf should have been able to escape. You can do this, my love." Ariadne gripped his hand, her other hand glowing with residual silver power as the first baby began to crown. The royal healers arrived, but it was Ridge who caught his first child, a boy with tiny fists and powerful lungs that announced his arrival with a wail that echoed across the battlefield. "Cade," Ariadne gasped, smiling through tears as Ridge placed their son on her chest. "His name is Cade." The second baby came quickly, another boy, quieter but no less perfect, his eyes already alert and aware. "Theron," Ridge said softly, his voice choked with emotion as he helped deliver his second son. The final baby took longer, and Ariadne was exhausted, her body trembling with effort. But Ridge was there, his hands steady, his voice constant, guiding her through each contraction until finally, their daughter emerged, tiny and perfect, with a cry that sounded almost like a song. "Lyra," Ariadne whispered, tears streaming down her face as Ridge placed their daughter beside her brothers. "Our Lyra." Ridge gathered his entire family into his arms, Ariadne and 3 perfect infants, and wept openly. Around them, thousands of wolves knelt in reverence, witnessing the birth of the prophesied triplets who would unite their world. The dawn sun broke over the horizon, bathing the scene in golden light, as if the moon goddess herself was blessing this moment. "They're perfect," Ridge breathed, his finger traced gently over each tiny face. "They're absolutely perfect." Ariadne looked up at him, at the male who'd fought armies for her, who'd declared war to save her, who loved her children as if they'd always been his. "We did it," she whispered. "We survived." "We did more than survive," Ridge said, pressing his forehead to hers. "We changed everything." And as their children nestled between them, 3 tiny heartbeats joining with their parents' own, a new era began. One built not on division and conflict, but on love, unity, and the unbreakable bond between true mates. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The future had begun.